Well, it's a real pleasure to speak at Harvard Business School today. Thank you very much for having me here. My name is Taso Du Val. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called TopTal. What we do is connect startups, companies, and organizations with top developers and engineers all over the world. My background is in engineering and in software development. And I was part of a company called Slide, which was one of the largest social gaming companies. And, I think at one point in time we had, maybe when it sold, we had about 300 million users, which is larger than Facebook at the time because, we had High Five, MySpace, Facebook, all these different companies who were leveraging our service. So we got to hire a lot of really great tech talent. And I was also at a company, we had to hire it really fast and our bar was really high. It was incredibly hard to find. Also at Photolog, I think when I left the 18th largest website in the world, it ended up becoming the 12th largest website in the world. I believe it was number 1 in South America at one point in time. And, going through those high growth periods twice was quite a kind of eye-opening experience. And it let me see what it takes to hire A players. And we noticed that there was basically a large gap in the market for hiring A players, especially around the world. I think The Economist recently had an article which was saying something about, the lack of A players and really talented people and how hard it is to find these types of people, despite the recession and all this sort of stuff. But there's a lot of great people all over the world. And so my talk today is basically on hiring really fast, hiring the best people, and what that takes and really kind of what the process looks like. Also, I'll talk to you guys about the different types of hiring mediums that are available today. So hiring is way different than it was 10 years ago. You have things like crowdsourcing, topsourcing, democratized labor markets, all sorts of crazy things which enable you to literally move a company 20 to 30 times faster, which is insane. And so I'll talk to you guys about that a little today. And so here we go. So what can a human do? Well, a human can pretty much do almost anything. And if you get a lot of them, then they can really almost do anything. It's just about coordinating all those individuals together and getting them on the same page. But really what's more important is, what is the human? What are they capable of doing individually? And at what caliber can they do that at? So you might have an accountant. Some accountants are better than others. You might have an engineer. Some engineers are better than others. How do you create a group of accountants that are amazing? How do you create a group of engineers that are amazing? The first thing is raw intelligence. So when you look at when you have somebody come into your company, organization, startup, whatever it may be, you want to gauge the raw intelligence. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this. You can ask a question like, how many ping pong balls fit in a 747? Give them an algorithm test. Give them some sort of behavioral test, whatever it may be. But you really want to stress this one point. This is what we looked at Slide. This is what the greatest companies in the world look at. And it's really, really critical because no matter how good they are as a software engineer writing code, or how good they are as an accountant, or whatever it may be, you really want to test their rudimentary intelligence and get to understand what their decisions will be like on anywhere from a low level to a high level. Because self-managing individuals are by far the best individuals in any company. And we only hired those types of individuals in our company and in pretty much any other previous company that I worked at. Raw intelligence is a fascinating and great indicator of this. A congruent vision. This is what you find a lot of people don't have in startups, and it causes a lot of dissonance within the startup. When I talk about congruent vision, I'm talking about people having the same exact vision and understanding of what your company does, and being clear on what your company does, as well as getting an idea with the individual who you're hiring so they understand and are passionate about what they're getting themselves involved into. Everyone says they want to work on an interesting problem. I'm sure you guys, how many people here want to work at an interesting company? Oh, wow. Fascinating. So there really is no such thing as a standalone interesting company. There's only me letting you know that this company is interesting. And a Rubik's Cube can be an interesting problem. But if I tell you it's going to find your wife or husband, I'm sure you'll solve it pretty damn fast. So it's just about letting people know what that vision is and having them aligned to it. And making sure that they're excited about it. Not everyone shares the same vision. In our company, for example, some people don't like to freelance and subcontract and work remotely. Maybe they want to work in a lab. They might be of the caliber that we're looking for, but they're just not the right people for us. So that's really important. The next thing, and equally important as the previous, is communication. You really want to make sure that whoever you hire is proactive in communicating, not reactive. That's actually probably one of the biggest fallacies in working with an individual, like, period. It's just terrible. You know, create tests and ways to figure out how that person communicates. You know, are they going to go after a problem, or are you going to have to approach them and say, hey, listen, this is the problem, and then they'll come to you with a solution. You want to get people who are really, really proactive in communication, not only in person, but you want somebody who responds to an email in 5 minutes. You want somebody who calls you right away when a problem arises. These are really, really important things to think about. It can really be pivotal, you know, when you're creating a company and you have a group of individuals that rely either on infrastructure or any of these things. It's extraordinary, pivotal. So how do you find talent in 2011? Well, there's a lot of different ways. And I'll go over them with you. You know, you could do traditional outsourcing, which is, you know, firms like IDEO. You could say McKinsey's kind of an outsourcing firm in some sort of way. You know, third party that does some work for you. You have democratized outsourcing companies, freelance, Odesk, people who are on these platforms and are willing to work regardless where they are in the world, regardless of time zone. It's amazing what these platforms offer. Crowdsourcing, Crowdflower, Mechanical Turk, you have a whole bunch of others coming out. These allow you to kind of get into tasks that weren't really even possible to solve 5 or 10 years ago, from fixing content to just, I mean, gosh, I'll get into some of the possibilities in a bit here, but it's quite fascinating stuff. You have standard hiring, going on Craigslist, going on Monster.com, tapping into your network. You know, everyone I'm sure is pretty familiar with this stuff. And then topsourcing, which is kind of an emerging market. We consider ourselves a topsourcing company. There's another company called Solvate, which is what I would consider a topsourcing company. They're basically like democratized outsourcing marketplaces, but they offer a much higher caliber for a whole variety of different reasons. So let's talk about traditional outsourcing and how you can leverage that in your company. First, let's talk about what people perceive outsourcing to be like. There's actually a book called The Black Book of Outsourcing where I believe George Bush talks about don't use the word outsourcing because it's already been dismantled and kind of looked at as a really poor way to start doing work. What I have to say about that is test references, execute, hire fast, and fire fast. Do the first 3 in 48 hours unless you're moving too slow. Test them. Use great metrics and all sorts of kind of different gauges to see what this outsourcing company is like, just like you would in your standard hiring procedures. Don't make any exceptions. Again, you know, the 3 tenets, making sure that this firm communicates well, making sure that they're congruent with your vision, and having a team that's excited about working on this project, and making sure they're very intelligent is extremely important. So the first 3, do within 48 hours, test references, and then figuring out if you're going to go with them or not. And then I would say in about 2 weeks, work on a trial period with them and figure out if you want to go with them or not. Sometimes it's wise to hire multiple outsourcing companies, especially if they're inexpensive, to do the projects and see who makes the most progress in that period of time. because overall that could actually have quite a different time cost ratio to it. When do you want to do this? Well, this is actually kind of interesting. A lot of people think outsourcing, okay, well, we could do it for consulting, we could do it for IT outsourcing. But there's actually a whole bunch of things that you can do. You can actually do customer service and technical support outsourcing. You can even do biz dev, sales, and marketing, which a lot of people don't think of. So having a whole team of business development people, elsewhere besides the United States or Western Europe might be way more effective because you could hire literally like 50 people for the cost of 5 people here. And while you want to make sure that your quality control is spot on and that you're not giving anything up, it's really worth thinking about for biz dev, sales, and marketing. Software development and large projects that are rather complex, I would say be cautious of these, specifically if you don't have any technical experience. Even though you're giving it to somebody, like a project manager and all this sort of stuff, it's very easy to see if a project is going astray if you're technical. I mean, I've worked with a bunch of different outsourcing companies all over the world, 40 different countries or so, and I will tell you very quickly, I can tell if they suck or if they're good, basically based off the fact of some of the technical decisions that they're making. We'll just can them. We'll just say, okay, you're good, you're not. And that's pretty much the end of that. So that leads us to democratized outsourcing. Marketplaces like Elance, Odesk, Guru.com, Freelancer.com, there's a whole bunch of them. And these are fascinating. Actually, this concept in general was what inspired me to do the current company which I'm working on. And there's just so much you can do here. So the common first thoughts of this are actually quite similar to the ones of traditional outsourcing, but it allows for a little bit more flexibility because you get direct insight into the individuals that you'll be working with one-on-one. There's no friction. A lot of times outsourcing companies have friction about you talking to the developers directly because they think that you'll poach them. There's communication problems, all this sort of stuff. So in this model, you actually get to connect with the individuals one-on-one quite quickly, engage them individually. It's a great option. Again, the procedures for testing them, getting the references, figuring out if you want to go with them, and then executing and hiring them are pretty much the same. Or hiring or firing them is pretty much the same, unless they're really bad. So when you want to do this, basically I would say this is pretty similar. The difference is here, you have to assimilate teams. Sometimes on these platforms you get teams that are pretty good, but I would say in general, on these platforms, I and clients of ours have had good experiences with teams that are on these platforms, specifically because good outsourcing companies already are doing pretty well and have other avenues of marketing. Crowdsourcing, again, a very fascinating way to leverage labor and workforces. And they've kind of started off on a good foot. The common thoughts of this, I would say in general, people are saying, oh yeah, there's so much I can do, from anywhere from content control to gauging what should and should not be on a website to crowdsourcing business development leads. How many CTOs are in America? Find them all for me. Well, if you give that to 10,000 people, they can find it pretty fast. So this is pretty interesting. And it opens up a whole new realm of possibilities for labor and workforces. In this, it's kind of hard, if not impossible, to get references and kind of interview them. Really what you want to do is you just want to put a bunch of tests out there and figure out, are these people good or not at what they're doing? It's kind of interesting what you can do, and specifically with crowdsourcing, is you can say, I'll work with the CTO example. Find me all CTOs in the United States that have worked in a Fortune 1000 company. Okay, well, if I put that out and 10,000 people are looking at this, I can almost guarantee you that there's going to be a subset of individuals who will not only find them faster, but who will find them in a more quality manner. So when I say that, I'm talking about people who give you accurate information. You might have a whole subset of people who just find random or incorrect email addresses. There's ways to basically filter out the top individuals and then only end up working with them. And that is very, very effective. Again, I stress 48 hours. Put that deadline on yourself. It's really tight, and you might think, that's like impossible, dude. What are you, crazy? But really, interview, do references, everything within 48 hours. Every company that I've ever been hired from has interviewed me, hired me within 48 hours. And we do the same. So it's possible, right? We can do it. Anyone can do it. And you want to do this with small tasks. You know, tasks not optimized for one person. You know, use your imagination. And non-time sensitive tasks. There's really large problems in a whole bunch of websites, which, you know, are just non-time sensitive problem. I'll give you an example. Google Images. How do you tag images, right? It's almost impossible. It's not a time sensitive problem, but it takes a plethora of people to do this. In this one, I actually put a kind of action item list up on here because of the fact and way that you crowdsource stuff. You usually create some sort of list for a group of individuals to execute upon. In this, you know, you just want to really closely assess what you're doing, create a very detailed and strong task list of what you're doing for these individuals to 100% without question understand what you're doing, bulletproof it, make sure your friends understand it, test it, and then work with different services because different services randomly have better results than others. There's currently really no way to figure out which one has better in what area. You just kind of have to test it out. And then if you want to think of a great way to start an amazing company, you could actually right now think of a way to start a crowdsourcing company. For example, there's not really an API to filter content from humans, right? There's some kind of, I guess you could say, like decent ones that are based off of algorithms and all this sort of stuff. Crowdsourcing actually allows you to create, for example, a company that will allow you to have all the good people who I was talking about before, which you've just collected, and just say, hey, this is a new brand that just filters content, but it's almost in what I was speaking about previously, a top sourcing technique. You've already kind of found all these great people who are efficient, effective, know what they're doing, and do it well. So think of new possibilities that it enables. It's quite a new concept. And this leads me to top sourcing. So the first thoughts about it are that the people are very good. If you look at what our website or what we do is, you know, we market us as, you know, the best and blah, blah, blah. And so does Solvate. Another company, you know, they only accept people, you know, who have prestigious working experience and all this sort of stuff. And it's great. And my advice here is to really just hire them within, I guess, 2 to 4, you know, hire within 48 hours or decide if you want to or not. And then within a 2-week time period, figure out if you want to, you know, continue working with them or not. The reason that I omitted references here is because on most of these platforms and on most of the top sourcing platforms, you already have references. You already have all these things there. So they're very transparent. They're very verbose with the information that they put on the candidates' resumes and all this sort of stuff. So it's really just worthwhile just kind of moving forward with a candidate, maybe one interview or so. And when critical tasks, you know, you can rely on these. They're very reliable. Highly sensitive or time-sensitive tasks, you know these individuals are very good. You can move forward with them very quickly. And then they can become team members or long-term team members. They are basically great people, so you probably want to continue working with them. Managing the talent. So it's really interesting. We've seen all sorts of different ways that our clients and, you know, in my experience, the companies that I've worked with have managed talent. And there's definitely a correct and incorrect way of doing this. And it's fascinating because the more remote and distributed that our world is becoming, the more this is changing as a topic. And me being kind of at the forefront of all of this, I'm just fascinated every day seeing what it's like to work with people in Brazil, Russia, China, US in one time, basically syncing up in one time zone here, and seeing what that's like while having an in-house team as well. So it's quite fascinating, and we may have had it back then, but I think this is becoming more ubiquitous as we're having all this stuff come to fruition. So, a couple notes here. Remote talent and in-house talent, not that different. The problem is, again, going back to the stigma of working with remote people. Well, we don't often work with remote people within the United States that often. If you have, probably have had a good work experience. With really high quality individuals, they manage themselves and they manage themselves well. So the US just kind of inherently, or a lot of the times, has really high quality talent relative to the rest of the world. And we've noticed that. Not trying to be pejorative or anything, but yeah, it's not that different when it comes to managing these people. You really want to communicate what your company does. You interview them the same way. Skype is available. All these different mediums are available today. And it's really not so different. But again, communication, I want to stress, is the most important part about this, whether they're in-house or they are remote. You're going to probably, if you start a company today, most likely very quickly, you'll end up with an in-house team and an outsourced team or a distributed team, virtual team somewhere. So communicating with that entire team and keeping them synced up is like ridiculously important. So I use an example here of, engineers or developers. And this is what you're up against, without question, especially with great people. So they think you suck. They think you're incompetent. You lack vision. You're an idiot with money. You can't write code. You can't manage. That's what they're coming into the interview thinking. Why am I going to work with you? I'm an A player. I'm the shit. Why you? So here's what you have to do. Kind of straightforward. Be fun. Teach them something. That's really important, especially if you're teaching A players in the interview. They'll love you for it. It's quite fascinating. It's like an instant connection that allows them to say, hey, listen, I'm going to progress not only economically within this company, but I'm also going to progress myself intellectually and within my career. So I want to be a part of this company. And money often, with some of the smartest people in the world, doesn't mean jack. It's really about progressing yourself intellectually and progressing themselves in their career. That's what they want to see. That's why a lot of people work at, Google. It's a place where a lot of really smart, intelligent people are, especially engineers. And so other engineers find that fascinating. They don't pay, the craziest, but people want to connect on that level. And then, being transparent with them, basically sharing things about what your company is doing internally, in a terse manner, nothing that's going to breach intellectual property of your company or something like this. And again, going back to communication, just communicate with them passionately. Managing remote talent tips. These are just really specific things. Again, use Skype excessively. In this case, I used engineers as an example, or a tech company, since this is the Tech Media Club. So expose them to Silicon Valley, TechCrunch, Quora, or your markets. The reason that I say that this is specific for remote talent is because a lot of people who are outside of the United States, they don't know what the hell Quora is. They don't know what TechCrunch is. And when you show them about these things, it's like you're teaching them something. You're teaching them about what's going on in the world and about the newest information. And I will tell you, time and time again, I am fascinated by how responsive these people are and how thankful these people are for me introducing them into the most, everyday things that we see. I'll be honest. When I've introduced probably over 100 engineers to Quora who are in Brazil, Russia, all over the world. And every time that I've introduced them, they've thanked me so much. And they've been so grateful for that one specific conversation. And it's fascinating because even though we live in such a connected world, the internet and all this sort of stuff, being in a specific geographic location actually matters. And it still actually matters today. So while something might be obvious to you, make it obvious to them. And then use Pivotal Tracker, other project management tools. These things really help sync up the team. It makes them stay on the same page, and it helps everyone kind of know what's going on. It gives a level of visibility, transparency, and accountability to your entire team. And that's what your entire team wants to see. It'll really make the team united a lot more. And I just threw in a little tip here. Scrum is a method of software development. And basically, every day you stand up, metaphorically speaking, if you're remotely, or you can if you want, and talk about what you're working on for the day, so that as the day starts, everyone's synced up, no matter what time zone you're in, and you get a nice head start to the day. And it just syncs up everyone really nicely. It's great. This is something that's really powerful, especially if you're a well-funded company or you're growing really fast or something like this. Buy everyone who's remote an office like your office. A new laptop, a MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, whatever. Get them 3G, WiMAX, a smartphone, a backup power supply, high-speed internet, some monitors. Give them Silicon Valley in Brazil. Give them Silicon Valley in Russia. That's what they want. And it'll also help your company because it's crazy. It's like we have a whole bunch of guys in Medellin, Colombia. And it's like they have power outages like once a week. I'm like, what's going on here, dude? So we supplied them with power supply backups, and that kind of solved that problem. Then we ran into the problem where that was shutting off their internet, so we had to buy them 3G cards, and that solved that problem. But you want them to, stay connected and be as on time and kind of have enough, FaceTime or virtual time as everyone else in the company is having, and not have this affect your company. So that's really important. And if you really want to incentivize any of your remote workers, H-1Bs, they'll freak out. They'll fly here expecting them and be super happy. Creating a great product with a vision behind it, it's obvious, but hardly any companies do it. They just expect people to work endlessly and tirelessly, but sharing that vision that you have with them, albeit remotely, is super important. And then have them work with other great people. You guys are from Harvard. Like, dude, tell them that and let them know that. They want to work with other great people. Sometimes these guys have like IQs of 160 and they're in Colombia and they have no access to this world. So you can arbitrage and create value for them intellectually by letting them know that they're working with great people and trying to create the synergistic relationship with you, even though you're working remotely, and have everyone on the same page. It's really powerful stuff. So let them know that you're an A player and that they're an A player and you want to work with them. One final thing which applies to every single person who you are thinking about working with, start with trial periods. Never hire someone, period, for the start. So we do this in our company. Actually, the current company that I run enforces this. You actually, unless you work with us for 2 weeks, you can't hire someone, basically, period. Zynga does this. A lot of other great companies are starting to do this more and more and more. Start with them as contractors and do not hire them until you are fully confident that you want to work with this person for a very long time. This will mitigate legal risk. It'll, more importantly, mitigate the products that you create and where those are going to go, because the people ultimately determine the product. And it'll ultimately save you money in the long run, a ton of money. You don't want to start hiring people and having them come onto your company and then all of a sudden you have 2 bad apples who ruin your entire company. I've seen it many times, and it's happened in many different areas before where, we've ended up firing those people, but it's really important, guys. And fire fast. It's easy to hire fast. If you want to hire somebody, they're awesome, they're rocking, they're creating a prototype that's going to raise you $3 million, $5 million, or maybe you're already profitable because of the work they're doing. Of course you're going to hire them. But the real pain for a lot of people is firing them. Dude, fire people, please. And putting this all together, you can create a fascinating company. You can create a company which is unlike any sort of company that has ever been able to exist before. Crowdsourcing content control, in-house engineers from your network, remote engineers from all over the world, design and marketing from third parties that are taking care of this, and customer service and sales from Odesk and Elance. The pace that you can build a company, it's amazing. It really is. And where you find this talent is amazing. It's just fascinating. That basically wraps up my talk today on hiring. I want to talk to you guys just a little bit about entrepreneurship. Literally 5 minutes or so. Now that you guys kind of have the understanding of what it's like to hire, hopefully pretty well, from a whole wide array of platforms, verticals, blah, 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 I want to talk to you guys about creating the company and what it's like to get in the market that you're going to get into. Mark Andreessen, all sorts of different venture capitalists, all these great entrepreneurs talk about team, product, and market. Team is who's in your core team and who you're going to hire. That's what we talked about today. That's going to determine your product, but it's not going to determine your market. You determine your market before you create your product and before you create your team. Your market is going to determine how successful you are, period. I don't care where you went to school. I don't care what you're doing. Your market is going to determine what or how, rather, successful you're going to be. IT outsourcing has a bunch of different figures attached to it. I'll go super conservative and say $500 billion market. I'll go on the high end and say $1.2 trillion market. So starting an IT outsourcing company, I'm pretty confident that I'll start a pretty big company. On the other hand, let's talk about microscopes. Pretty random, right? Well, I have a friend who's actually working on a microscope company. Microscopes are about a $4 billion industry. Well, in order to create a multi-billion-dollar company, you have to take about 50% of the market. Not really sure when the last time that happened is. I don't think it ever happened, but maybe it has. So just by determining the market from the beginning, from the get-go, from the start line, I could already say who's going to build a bigger company just by looking at it. I mean, sure, he might have this revolutionary company that, takes 100% market share, and somewhere along the line, 100% of microscopes are replaced by this person. Who knows? It could be the craziest thing ever. But let's be realistic and look at the market size, and the opportunity in that market. What's its growth like? Where are the competitors? Be smart about it. It's really important. It's the most important thing. It'll determine everything about your company. You could have B players and way kick the A player's ass if you haven't picked the right market. So remember that. In closing thoughts, assess what you need and where you're at with everything, from how you're going to hire to the market you're in, to the team, to the product, to everything. And then execute. That's all.